So it is with us as Christ's bride. Our time is to be spent patiently as we, with consistent forbearance, prepare ourselves to spend eternity with Christ as our bridegroom, being transformed, Romans 12, 1 and 2, so that we might be conformed to the image of Christ. Long-suffering, we think of it as a passive thing, but it's not just a passive thing. It has its positive and active side too. It involves a consistent determination to do the will of the Lord. A consistent determination to do the will of the Lord. We are set apart by God, for God. And long-suffering puts this into practice as we patiently strive towards us. Hebrews 12:1 talks about this, and James 1:3 and 4, and James 5:7 and 8. It's talking about us patiently striving towards it. And as long-suffering became a part of the character of the Jewish bride, it led to gentleness. Now, this word gentleness is not just like we think of the English word. In the Greek, this word conveys the idea of being more useful, right? That's what it's talking about here. To be gaining in excellence, both in character and in the presentation of that character to others. To show by our actions that we are actually becoming good inside. To show that we are actually changing from what we are towards what we should be, to be conforming to the image of Christ, to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. The Jewish bride, secure in the love of the groom and with the assurance that this brings, patiently and with forbearance prepares herself to be a wife. This preparation improves the character, and this is what this is talking about, and her demeanour. In other words, when you see her and you meet her and you talk to her, you've talked to her before she was betrothed, and she's this silly girl, right? Now, she's got every right to be a silly girl. There's no responsibilities on her or anything. And then she's betrothed, and you say, oh, is this silly girl ever going to make a wife that's worthwhile? And you meet her after 6 months as a bride. And what do you find? Well, her character has changed. Her demeanour has changed. You meet her and it's obvious that suddenly she's not the silly girl she used to be. She now has become something else altogether. And this is this gentleness. This preparation improves the character and the demeanour so that it's obvious to all that she is becoming more and more suited to the groom. When you met her before, you said, oh, what did he ever see in her? And then you come along and you meet her after 6 months and you say, oh, boy, well, I can see what he saw in her. He's probably smarter than I thought he was. Right. It can be seen that she will not only be a pleasant and a fitting wife, but she will also be useful and kind. Her aim is to deliberately and constantly fit herself to the image of a future husband's desires and to grow in that image so that eventually she is just that image and nothing else. I'll just read that again. Her aim is to be deliberately and to consciously fit herself to the image her future husband desires and to grow in that image so that eventually she is just that image and nothing else. That's what she's aiming for, and that's what this gentleness is. That it's the achieving of that aim to be what her husband wants. And so it is with us as Christ's bride. The gentleness, usefulness, that's what it's talking about, is the result of long suffering. It's the practical living of our Christian lives in a way that improves and changes our character. what we really are, moulding it to the image of Christ. And as this gentleness, this usefulness develops our character, the result is what the Bible talks about as goodness. Now in the Greek, this word is all about virtue and beneficence. Virtue is being good. Beneficence is benefiting. Under the Jewish system, the bride, in striving to become fitted to become a wife, actually changed in her character. And it needed to, of course. When she was a silly girl, she thought of herself, and she probably wasn't considerate, she probably wasn't helpful in the house. A mother would ask her to do things and she'd say, "Oh, right, I suppose I've got to, Mum." Right? Then she's betrothed, and she suddenly strives to become fitted to become a wife. And as she does, her horizons become wider. She thinks beyond herself. She's not so selfish anymore. She becomes less self-centered. She understands that she's not the only person in the world. She understands, probably for the first time in her life, that everybody else matters as well as her. She becomes more willing to serve others. She realises that when she's married, she's going to have to look after her husband, she's going to have to look after her children, and she understands that in itself, though a responsibility, will be a joy and something to look forward to. She becomes better equipped to be helpful and kind and virtuous. And as she realises this and practices it, it actually becomes a part of her. And so she gradually developed to be a good and virtuous person, and this became increasingly so as the time went on. She saw that this was necessary if she was going to be the wife that she needed and wanted to be for this particular man. Why would she do it? Why would she go to all this trouble? Well, in response to his love. And so it goes right through back to that. As with every aspect of this subject, one thing leads to another, and all grow from, reflect, and depend on the love, not of the bride, but of the groom. And it's the same with us as Christ's bride. This goodness, growing out of gentleness, fueled by long-suffering, leads to faith. In the Greek, this word is about trust, faith, belief, and assurance, and it's also about faithfulness. The Jewish bride, secure in the love of the groom, with calm delight, joy, patiently strives to conform to the image of the good wife she hopes and strives to be, trusting that the groom will not only come for her, which she knows he will, but that he will be happy with her when he comes. And to her, that's a very important thing. She trusts him completely and is therefore confident in his love. And this is part of this idea of faith. But there is more to this word. The groom under the Jewish system was often a long time coming. The bride at first would be in a bit of a flurry, all emotion, excitement and enthusiasm, and you can imagine it. When she's first betrothed, she'd be so excited and so enthusiastic. But as time went on, however, she would begin to realise the job ahead of her and patiently set herself to it. She would, at first, hardly know where to start. But once she sat down and thought about the future, she would put a plan in motion. And she developed in the preparation of herself. She found that all else had to be put aside if she was to achieve the desired result. She discovered that it was a big job. She looked at herself and said, "Well, I am not ready yet. There is a great deal that I need to learn and to know and to practice, and I need to get stuck into it and do it. And so she learned to be faithful to the task of conforming to the image. Faithful, consistent endeavour became a way of life to her. And you'd say, oh, well, would she, this was making hard work of it, would she be happy with that? Well, the fact of the matter is, that's what gave her the greatest satisfaction. Suddenly her priorities are changed. And suddenly, learning to cook, learning to sew, all these things that before, when a mother would say to her, look, my girl, you're going to be a wife one day and you need to learn all these things. And she'd say, oh, Mum, look, there's plenty of time. I'm not really interested in it. Now she would be saying, Mum, I need to learn to cook. You need to be taking the time out to teach me. And the mother would be saying, look, I've been telling you this for years. And you'd say, look, Mum, the time's now. We need to get stuck into it. And as the bride of Christ, we not only need faith for salvation, but also faithfulness in our daily striving to conform to Christ's image. Just like the bride, she needs to be faithfully striving, and so do we. The more the Jewish bride's faith and faithfulness developed, the more she realised the task ahead of her and the responsibility that was now hers. And this led her to meekness. Now, we often think of this word meekness and associate it with weakness. But in the Greek, this word is about gentleness, humbleness, meekness, and gratitude. As the Jewish bride began to look within herself, it became clear to her that she was unworthy of the groom's selfless love and far from what she would wish to be when he came. She would look at herself and say, oh dear, he's chosen me, now I need to be far different to what I am when he comes for me. This introduced a certain humbleness in her. Now, it didn't make her have a lack of self-worth or self-confidence, because she was the chosen one after all. Once she was chosen, there was assurance, there was confidence, the bride price had been paid. But an attitude of gratitude developed within her, that from all those available, the groom had chosen her to be his only special one. To be a bride back in the Jewish times was really something special. And when it happened to a girl, it changed her whole life. It changed her whole attitude to life. And in those societies, it mattered a great deal to a girl that she would be chosen. And once she was chosen, she would have great self-worth and self-confidence because she was chosen. And so in attitude and manner, a certain gentleness became a permanent part of her character, and it's spoken here as meekness. It is a quiet confidence that makes stress, clamour and disorder both undesirable and unnecessary. She would be quietly confident. She would have calm delight. And so she didn't need to put herself forward anymore. The veil that she wore was enough for her to have this confidence. And so it is with us as Christ's bride. When we look within ourselves, seeing our unworthiness, we become humbled and gentle, knowing that Jesus Christ, our bridegroom, will one day take us to be with him. We will then be no longer his bride, but the wife of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And we see this in Revelation 19:7 and Revelation 21:9. Under the Jewish system, this attitude of gratitude caused the bride to willingly and with determination set herself aside for a future husband And this setting aside of herself evidenced itself in temperance. Right, in the Greek, this word is about self-control, and this self-control also involves self-discipline. It is physical, emotional and spiritual self-control and self-discipline. The Jewish bride, before she was betrothed, was available to any proposal and indeed would welcome any circumstance that would assist her chances of becoming betrothed. She would be happy when a friend of hers was going to be married and say to her, "Will you be my bridesmaid?" And she would go home to her mother and say, "Mum, our friend here has asked me to be the bridesmaid for a wedding." And her mother would say, "Oh yes, now that's a good idea. Now, who's she marrying?" And they would find out. And it's mother and father would say, "Now let's have a look at all the groomsmen that might be involved." And they would all look together and there'd be great anticipation of the wedding, and she would go along and she would be looking for an opportunity to meet eligible men to assist the chances of becoming betrothed. Once betrothed, however, she puts on the veil of separation and sets about her preparation to be a wife. And now she's not looking to meet anyone else. There's a singleness of purpose. She devotes herself fully to this task and faithfully and joyfully separates herself for the groom. She's not thinking about other boys now. They don't enter into her mind. But her passions and physical need for fulfillment do not go away. In fact, they're heightened by anticipation of complete fulfillment. So now she enters a time of tension and temptation. Her physical and emotional senses, which during marriage will be the very delight of both the bride and the groom, are needing to be controlled during the betrothal. Remember, she's probably got a year to wait before she's actually married. And so this could be a real burden to the bride. But because of her responsive love for the groom and the development of her character, and knowing the humbleness at being chosen, she chooses to control herself, both physically and emotionally. And this is temperance. To the bride, this is not a burden to be carried, but a joy in itself, as this disciplining of herself also develops a character, and she joys in the fact that when the groom comes for her, she will be a virgin. She will be pure and holy and prepared to be completely separated for a future husband. The practice of temperance causes the bride to constantly bring to her mind the love of the groom and all that flows from it. This leads her to walk this path of the fruit of the Spirit all over again, day by day. And so it is with us as Christ's bride. When he comes for us, he expects to find us pure. He expects to find us holy and unspotted from the world. He expects to find us separated to him and separated for him. He expects to find us consistently, patiently and humbly seeking to be conformed to his image, at peace, filled with joy, calm delight, revelling in his love and looking up. Even so, come Lord Jesus. Now this is a poem that my daughter Cheryl wrote that sums up some of the romance of this idea. The bride was in the market, a veil upon her face. She walked among the people, set apart from the race. The groom out in the fields thought of his bride that day, and from his father's side he quietly slipped away. He stood beside a merchant's stall and waited till she passed, and caught her eye and smiled, whispered, "My love, we meet at last." He said, "The house is almost ready, the chamber's smelling sweet, the day is fast approaching, when as lovers we shall meet." She says, my Lord, my lamp is trimmed, I'm waiting for your call. I'm listening in the night watch and in the morning hour small. He says, my love, my dove, be ready. The day is drawing nigh. At my Father's will I'm coming, with a shout and with a cry. He said, I've paid the price in full. I've drunk the cup with you. My betrothed, my bride, my love for you is true. And she says, my Lord, I am not worthy.